What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. If you are buying your first ever sports car, then the Nissan 370Z and the Porsche Cayman simply must be on your shortlist. But before we dive into the numbers, I'm curious to find out your thoughts. Which car do you think will depreciate the least? Let me know down in the comments over here by either commenting Nissan or Porsche. And don't cheat by checking out the answer at the end of the video. If you are a regular viewer of this channel, you know that we always divide this analysis in a few simple steps. And that's also what we're going to do now. In step number 1, we'll figure out the price ranges for the Nissans. In step number 2, we'll figure out the depreciation per year. And in step number 3, we'll figure out the depreciation per 1,000 kilometers driven. In step number 4, which will be the last step, we'll compare the same figures, but then for the Porsche Cayman. If you're by the way interested in the full depreciation analysis for the Porsche Cayman, then I strongly recommend that you check out the full video, for which the link is popping up above here. Now let's start with step number 1 by investigating the graph which is popping up over here on the left hand side of your screen. We can see that we have price on the x-axis and the number of cars available for sale for that specific price on the y-axis. Now if you bring around 15,000 euros, you can get yourself into the cheapest 370Z, which you see on the left hand side. However, you can also bring 45,000 euros and then you can buy the most expensive 370Z on the market. The average price point sits somewhere in the middle at 27,000 euros, which is indicated by the dotted line which goes through the graph. Now when I had a closer look to this graph, I actually found that the automatic cars are a lot more expensive than the manual cars and the full market. Let's have a look to that. In the graph that you see over here, we have now in orange the automatic cars and in blue we have still the full market. We can see immediately that the dotted line for the automatic cars is a lot higher and that the average price point is closer to 30,000 euros versus 27,000 euros for the full market. Now if we also overlay the manual cars, we end up with the graph over here, where the manual cars are now displayed in green. You can see again by looking to the dotted line through the graph that the manual cars are priced significantly lower at around 25,000 euros. If you have any idea why that's the case, please let me know down in the comments. Furthermore, we can see that the availability of manuals and automatic cars is more or less the same, as there are 71 manuals for sale and 68 automatic cars for sale. Now splitting the graph between the Nismos and the non-Nismos revealed even some more interesting insights, so let's have a look to that. In the graph over here, the Nismos are displayed in orange and the non-Nismo cars are displayed in blue. You can see first of all that the average price point is about 6,000 euros higher for the Nismos than for the non-Nismos. You can also see that the Nismo cars are a lot more rare, as there are only 14 cars for sale out of the total market of 139 cars. Now I also checked that the price range for the cabriolets and the coupes were actually different, but this was not the case. So let's move on to step number 2 and figure out the depreciation per year. In the graph to the left of me, we have the average depreciation per year for a Nissan 370Z. However, before we dive into the numbers, let's first have a look to the graph itself. We can see first of all that on the horizontal axis we have the model year and on the vertical axis we have the price. Each of the blue dots you see represents a Nissan 370Z for sale in the current marketplace. You also see a line going through the graph, and this line shows the average depreciation per year for a Nissan 370Z. Then you will also see that there are axes throughout the graph, and this X represents the average price point for that specific model year. If we then dive into the numbers, we can see that the average depreciation for a Nissan 370Z is around 2,140 euros per year. We can however see that the depreciation curve is flattening out quite nicely for the older models, meaning that the depreciation per year will be lower over there. Now the depreciation per year for the newer models is of course a lot higher than the average number, as you can see from the steep slope of the depreciation curve. Now I splitted this depreciation curve over here for the automatic and the manual cars and for the cabriolets and the coupes. I however didn't find any significant differences in terms of depreciation per year for these cars over here. So let's move on now to the Nismos. Now it most likely is of no surprise to you that the Nismo cars are depreciating a lot more than the non-Nismo cars, and that's perfectly illustrated by the graph over here. The Nismos are now displayed in orange and the non-Nismo cars are now displayed in blue. We can see immediately by looking to the slope of the depreciation curve that the Nismos are depreciating significantly more than the non-Nismo cars. In fact, the depreciation for a Nismo car sits at around 3,669 euros, whereas the depreciation for a non-Nismo car sits at around 2,049 euros. This is a stunning difference of 1,600 euros per year. Now let's move on to step number 3, which is figuring out the depreciation per 1,000 kilometers driven for the Nissan 370Z. That analysis is popping up to the left of me over here, and we can see that we have in the horizontal axis the kilometers driven, and on the vertical axis we have the price. If we then have a look to the depreciation per 1,000 kilometers driven, we can see that this sits at around 134 euros. However, This depreciation is a lot less for the cars which already have more kilometers driven, as you can see that the depreciation curve is flattening out really nicely over there. I checked again if the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven was actually different for the automatic and the manual cars and for the cabriolets and the coupes, but I found no significant difference at all. It of course is of no surprise to you that I found a significant difference for the Nismo and the non-Nismo cars, so let's have a look to that one. The graph over here shows the Nismo cars in orange and the non-Nismo cars in blue. We can see immediately that the slope of the depreciation line is a lot steeper for the Nismo cars than it is for the non-Nismo cars. In fact, the Nismo cars are depreciating at a rate of 196 euros per 1000 kilometers driven, whereas the non-Nismo cars are depreciating only at a rate of 128 euros per 1000 kilometers driven. Now before we move on to step number 4, which is the comparison to the Porsche Cayman, let's first put things together and see how the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven and the depreciation per year go hand in hand. Now these two depreciation effects are perfectly illustrated in the graph over here, where we have model year on the horizontal axis and price on the vertical axis. Each of the dots again represents a Nissan 370Z for sale on the market, but the dots are now sized according to how many kilometers that Nissan has driven. So the larger the dot, the more kilometers that car has driven. The effect of year on price is perfectly illustrated by moving from the right hand side to the left hand side of the graph, as we can see that the older the car, the lower the price on the vertical axis. The second effect of kilometer on price is perfectly illustrated by looking to the size of the bubbles. We can see very clearly that when the bubble size increases, the price decreases on the vertical axis. It's finally time to move on to step number 4, which is the comparison to the Porsche Cayman figures. This comparison is shown in the graph over here, where we have on the horizontal axis the different models, and on the vertical axis we have the depreciation per year. We have from left to right the Cayman 987.2, the 987.2S, the Nissan 370Z Nismo, the Cayman 987.1, the Cayman 987.1S, and the standard 370Z. Now if we start with comparing the standard 370Z to the Porsche Cayman, we can see that the depreciation per year is most in line with the 987.1 version of the Cayman. This is however not an extremely fair comparison, as the 987.1 is a lot older car than the Nissan 370Z. Therefore, it would be more fair to actually compare the depreciation per year with the 987.2 version of the Cayman. Now if we compare those two cars, we can see that the Porsche Cayman 987.2 is in fact depreciating 2 times as fast as the Nissan 370Z. In fact, the depreciation for the Porsche Cayman 987.2 sits at around 4,000 euros, where it's closer to 2,000 euros for the 370Z. If we then compare the depreciation per year for the 370Z Nismo and the Porsche Cayman 987.2, we can see that the depreciation per year in fact is more or less the same for both cars, as they both depreciate between the 3,500 and 4,000 euros per year. Now I also added the comparison for the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven to the graph, and you can see that over here. In the top we still have the comparison for the depreciation per year. We can see very clearly from the graph that the 370Z Nismo is by far the most sensitive car to the kilometers driven. In fact, we can see that the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven is not comparable to any of the other cars in the graph. In fact, the depreciation per 1000 kilometers driven is almost twice as high as it is for the older Cayman models. Now we can see that the standard 370Z has a sensitivity to kilometer, which is more or less the same as for the Porsche Cayman models. And perhaps the most important, from all of the cars listed, for which one would you go? Would you go for a Porsche Cayman or for the 370Z? Let me know, I'm curious to find out. My money would be probably rolling towards a Porsche Cayman. Now if you want to see a full breakdown of the depreciation numbers for the Porsche Cayman, you can check out the numbers for the 987 in the video over here, and the numbers for the 981 you can check out over here. As always, hit the like button if you liked the video, subscribe, thank you for watching and see you next time.